Very good. Okay, Angelo.
All right, hello. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the City of Salem's Human Rights Commission. My name is Angelo Arredondo. I am the chair. I'm from Ward 2, and my pronouns are he and him. And we'll just do this as usual. I'll just call somebody, and then you call somebody, just popcorn style, until we get into all the introductions. So, Mike, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mike Waters, Commissioner from Ward 7. My pronouns are they and them, and I will pass it to Kathy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathy Ostrand-Ponchen. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a resident of South Salem, and I will pass it to Kelsey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey Murray. I use she, her pronouns. And I just moved, so I am now a member of Ward 4, and I'm going to pass it to Krista.
Hello there, everyone, and this is Krista Gallagher, and I am co-chair. I'm from Ward 4, and I use she, her. And I'm going to pass it to Johanna.
Hey everyone, I'm Johanna Costa. I work at Oregon Department of Justice as the Hate Crimes and Bias Incidents Response Coordinator. I'm pleased to be here today. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'll be sharing some information with you all in a little bit, and just really grateful to be here. I will pass it to Tricarico.
Hello, Tricarico here, they, them pronouns, resident of Ward 2. I'll pass it to Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Aguilar. I'm a lieutenant with Salem Police, and I'm the liaison between the police department and the Human Rights Commission, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'll pass it to Faye.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Faye Stetz-Waters. I'm the Director of Civil Rights at the Oregon Department of Justice. I'm here supporting Johanna. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm pleased to be here, and I will pass it to David.
Hi, my name is David Reinhold, resident of Polk County, and my pronouns are he and him, and I'll pass it to Gretchen.
Hi, everybody. Gretchen Bennett, staff to the commission and on the staff team at the mayor and city manager's office. I forgot to ask everyone as you begin speaking, if you could say your name. It helps orient our interpreter team towards you, and we appreciate that. And I will pass to Amelia.
Hi, I'm Amelia Knight. I'm a resident of Ward 4. My pronouns are she. And I will, I don't know who else there is. Krista?
Oh, I already went, Amelia.
I think
I'm sorry.
Themselves. I think we're good.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you, Angela here. All right, thank you, everybody. Public comment. Gretchen, do we have any public comment?
None that I've received. Oh, see, this is Gretchen. None that I have received for public comment outside of this meeting. I don't know if we have guests here tonight who'd like to make public comment, though.
Angela here. Yeah, would any of our guests like to make a comment or anything?
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none, consent calendar. Looks like we have quorum, right, Gretchen?
We do. And we have 2 sets of minutes before you tonight because the last time we didn't have quorum.
Okay, and then we can just approve those in one vote, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if everybody's ready, can I get a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes for, is that September and August's minutes?
Mm-hmm.
So moved. This is Kelsey. So moved.
All right, can I get a second?
This is Kathy. I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Okay, and doesn't look like there's any opposed, so thank you. Minutes and agenda passed. All right, and then we can move on to action and our discussion items, and that's the Department of Justice Bias Hotline. I believe that is Johanna and Faye.
Yeah, and I guess just by way, I just want to thank you for being here. We appreciate the exciting developments at the state and your work, and are excited to hear your updates and be able to ask you some questions. Thank you for being here.
This is Johanna. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here today. I will note that I am getting over a little bit of a cold, so I have a cough drop in my mouth, and I hope I don't move it around too much or distract anyone. But I do have a little bit of a frog in my throat, so want to acknowledge that. Just thank you so much for being here. I came to you all about a year ago, maybe 14 months ago, to say hello and introduce our new program that opened up in January of 2020. It's our statewide hate crimes and bias incidents response hotline. And on the hotline, we center our services and support on victims and survivors, folks who are targeted due to their race, color, national origin, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religion. So folks who are targeted for something very core to who they are. And we provide support services to folks on a hotline. Folks can choose to report online if they just want to document what has happened, or if they want to talk to an advocate and receive some support or next step options. We have a hotline that operates daytime 9 to 5. In the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, we have supported over 2,000 survivors who are targeted around the state in hate crimes and bias incidents. And I want to take a moment just to distinguish between the two, share with you again the updates on Oregon's law, and then talk to you a little bit about some data, which is what Gretchen and Lieutenant Aguilar asked me to focus on today. So a hate crime is criminal activity, so offensive touching, spitting, explicit and imminent threats, tampering with property, assaults, and even homicide that has any motivation targeting somebody's protected class, those 7 protected classes that I listed. So a hate crime has to have a criminal element. Folks who call the hotline do not need to have reported to law enforcement. In fact, for many folks who call the hotline, this is their first disclosure of something that has happened to anyone. The first disclosure they didn't share with their parent or their sibling or their best friend. They're sharing to someone that they don't know in an effort to really get centered and grounded as to, and here's some validation for what happened. We're very conscious to call it what it is, to validate that bias has occurred, and then to talk through some next step options. So bias crimes are codified in Oregon law under ORS 166.155 and 166.165. I know sometimes folks like to look up the statutes and really look into detail about what is required, what elements are required to constitute a bias crime under Oregon law. Oregon law now defines an additional form of bias under the law called a bias incident. And bias incidents are generally non-criminal bias targeting someone due to their protected class. And it's defined under ORS 147380. And a bias incident is defined as a hostile expression of animus targeting somebody's protected class. We see this in schools and workplaces and housing settings, in hate speech, in offensive jokes, and I use the air quotes around the word jokes, mimicking and mocking, really trying to make folks feel othered and like they don't belong. So a bias incident is reportable to the hotline. Sometimes folks choose to report incidents to law enforcement. And law enforcement is now required under the law, if someone reports a bias incident, to refer victims for support. And that can be to the hotline, and it can be to what are called qualifying local victim services. So bias crime, law enforcement is not obligated to make a referral to the hotline, although they can. But a bias incident, law enforcement does not have a choice. They are required. It's not a you might want to, it's a you shall report to the hotline. I'm sorry, refer victims to the hotline. So like I said, we've received over 2,000 reports to the hotline since the hotline opened. And our focus is on support, on healing, on resource options, sometimes on next step options if folks are wanting to learn about some next step options. We are confidential, so we don't share anything that folks share with us without the person's permission. One of the great things that we have done in the last few months is work with a community agency to help us put a visual picture towards some of our data. We have a wonderful data dashboard on our website at standagainsthate.oregon.gov, where we update the public on what's being reported to the hotline in a de-identified way. So things like where bias is being reported, who is being targeted, what their protected class identity is, what type of conduct is occurring. Is it harassment or assault or being refused service? So that information is on our website. But Faye, my colleague, had a wonderful idea to put a visual picture to this data to help share what is happening. And our first pilot county in this data visualization project was Marion County. And so we put together a data visualization one-pager, which is actually 2 pages front and back, to share some of the data. So I'm going to share my screen. This is available on our website. And I'm going to try to zoom in quite a bit. And so I want to share with you what has been reported to the hotline. So we know that most folks, I'm going to start with this iceberg data, this infographic iceberg. We know that most folks who experience bias never report to anyone. In fact, there's a Bureau of Justice Statistics report that says that about 3% of bias is ever reported to anyone. So we know that what's under the water, what's under the surface here is this massive iceberg of racism and anti-LGBTQ, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic, ableist conduct that occurs that nobody ever tells anyone. But in terms of what has been reported in Marion County from January of 2020 through April of 2021, we had 132 reports of bias in that time period. And folks elected to report 83 of those incidents to law enforcement. And you can see we have this kind of funneling effect. In terms of those reports to law enforcement, 45 of those were classified as criminal, and 10 cases were charged by the district attorney's office, and this is only Marion County. So this is what it has looked like in Marion County for the last year and a half or so. And so you can see that from this graphic that, again, many folks are not reporting hate and bias to the hotline. And for those who do, fewer decide to report to law enforcement, fewer are classified as criminal, and even fewer are prosecuted or prosecutable. I'm going to move to this graphic over here that shows the trending of what has been reported as bias crimes in Marion County since 2014. And you can see that we are on an upward trend. We had a huge surge in reporting in 2016 around the election, which follows national trends and data. But you can see that in 2019, we had 20 reports of bias crime to law enforcement. In 2020, about 35 reports of bias crime to law enforcement agencies. And then already in 2021, bias reported to the hotline were at over 50 cases through April. So just showing you that we're on an upward trajectory. One of the things that is helpful with the hotline is that folks don't have to make a determination straight away if they are wanting to report to law enforcement. They can learn about what that might look like, what their options are, and make an informed decision about whether they want to report. But again, just a quick snapshot of what is being reported to law enforcement in terms of bias crimes in Marion County over the past year and a half. Also on this one pager, we provide the information that is shared with us in terms of who is being targeted. So the law specifies that it is about the perpetrator's perception of identity for both a bias crime and a bias incident. What that means is that a person does not have to identify as a member of that particular protected class if they are targeted as a member of that protected class. So oftentimes what happens is that folks are targeted and misidentified in that targeting. Throughout the pandemic, we have had a very large number of reports of anti-Asian bias and anti-China bias. And we often have folks report to the hotline who say, well, I'm Native Hawaiian, and someone told me, some slur about China or the Wuhan flu or some other type of scapegoating type language. And the person does not identify as Chinese or of Chinese heritage or even as Asian. And so that misidentity also contributes to the harm. But in terms of who is being targeted or what perception of identity is being targeted, similar to national data, the vast majority of reports include race and color-based bias. But you can see all of our 7 protected classes, folks have experienced bias and discrimination in Marion County. And you can see the breakdown as well as the intersectionality of identity for folks who have experienced targeting. A couple of more graphics for you. We want to make sure that folks have information. And so I think I'll start down here in this area where we try to explain the difference between a bias incident and a hate crime so that folks understand the difference. Both are extremely harmful, both are not okay, and both are absolutely reportable to the hotline. Many law enforcement agencies have policies to do a complete investigation and write a report of any bias incidents. And that's important because we know that often bias incidents precede bias crime or hate crime. So again, I gave some examples of slurs and epithets and symbols with any type of bias motivation targeting a protected class are examples of bias incidents. But crimes, again, any touching, spitting, damage to property, tampering with property, certainly hands-on offenses and assaults, plus, again, any evidence of bias motivation equal a hate crime or a bias crime under Oregon law. And the final graphic that we wanted to share is that we all have a role to play. Folks can report bias to DOJ or to law enforcement. We rely on law enforcement to respond appropriately, to respond, investigate, and charge bias crime when it's reported. And one of the things that Oregon's laws now require is better tracking of bias. For so long, I think many folks in dominant culture and in our legislature say, well, we don't have a good handle on what the problems are, or what the numbers are, or what the issues are. And we can't say that anymore. It's very clear from the data that we have what is happening and where. So this one pager, like I said, is available on our website. I can send Gretchen a link to that information. We would love for you to disseminate this within your communities. I'm also happy to walk you through, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, to walk you through our data dashboard on our website, if that's helpful. That is updated monthly and is interactive. It's a really great tool that the Criminal Justice Commission shares, but I'm happy to take any questions or receive any feedback that folks have this evening.
This is Tricarito speaking. Can you expand for me? There was a bubble that said non-protected classes. Can you let me know what kinds of things you would normally see in that category?
This is Johanna. That's a wonderful question. So in that, and we actually have that breakdown on our website in our data dashboard. So Oregon law identifies 7 protected classes under these statutes. Oftentimes folks will call the hotline and say, I was targeted because of my gender, which is not a protected class under this statute, or because of my housing status, or because I was protesting, or because of my employment status or veteran status. So we actually have a full list or breakdown of the additional targeted classes that are not protected under this statute, and we feel like it's very important to keep track of that. There are many folks who are targeted in because of their of being houseless. Many folks who are targeted because of age or gender. And so we want to make sure that we're tracking that information as well.
Thank you.
This is Kathy. I have a question about the number of reports, and you may have already addressed this, Johanna, so I'm sorry if you did, but what you showed us from Marion County, is that all reports only that came in through the hotline, or does that include reports that may have come in through some other means? I don't know. I think you said that the law enforcement is required to also report to the hotline. I just want to make sure, are we getting a full picture, or may there be some other crimes and incidents that aren't being captured in the data?
So on this one pager, we were very fortunate to have data from Oregon State Police. So Oregon law requires each law enforcement agency to make a report to the Oregon State Police every quarter about bias crimes that have been reported to them. And in addition, Marion County DA's office said, yes, we also want to voluntarily provide DOJ with our prosecution data. So the one pager includes a full picture. Our data dashboard at standagainsthate.oregon.gov only includes the data that is reported into the hotline. So if someone reports to the police and the police investigate and the DA's office prosecutes and I never hear from that person, that data is not captured on our data dashboard. It is, however, captured in our annual report that the criminal justice issues every July 1st. And both annual reports are available on our website as well.
This is Gretchen. I think we have Kelsey and then Mike.
This is Kelsey. First, This was great. Thank you so much for presenting. I learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to going through in more detail on my own. You mentioned a little bit about some national trends, specifically around the election 2016 and the rise of hate crimes against Asian Americans during the pandemic. So I'm wondering, do you have like other data related to like national, like hate crime or bias motivated incidents, kind of more broadly?
This is Johanna. Another great question. So yes, we are tracking that information. We know that, for example, starting in March of last year, we saw our first surge of anti-Asian bias. And so we started tracking that straight away on the hotline. After the murder of George Floyd, and with dominant culture's acknowledgement of the Black Lives Matter movement, and really a national awakening by dominant culture to what has been happening for Black folks and Brown folks throughout history, with protests and other things, we started tracking bias related to BLM. So we have additional data on protest related bias, but also anti-Black bias that is specifically affiliated with the Black Lives Matter movement. At the end of the summer and really moving into the election season, we saw a surge of doxing. And doxing is this idea that someone can encourage other folks to stalk, harass, intimidate folks by publishing their very personal information online, their names, their children's names, their phone number, their address, their school or their children's school. So we saw a surge of doxing, which encourages really community hate to come forward. So we started tracking that. And then finally, around the insurrection, we saw a surge of Islamophobia. And so we started tracking Islamophobic bias specific to that era around the insurrection. The trends are in the Criminal Justice Commission annual report, with a breakdown of what was seen following those social and political trends. And we're continuing to sort of keep our eyes out for other trends that follow significant events across the nation.
This is Kelsey. Just a follow-up question. Do you know if the like number or percentage of bias motivated incidents is like relative to what the country has been seeing? Do you know if that data is, I don't know if other states are doing this. Are you aware of that?
This is Faye. Thank you for your question. You know, our bias hotline is one of a kind in the nation, and many states are trying to model what we do. We don't have people who are answering a phone line, a hotline contemporaneously, providing victim-centered services. So we don't have that in rest of parts of the country. And most states have some type of hate crime law. I think there are 2 or 3 that don't have any, and many states are moving towards looking at bias incidents. But no one has a hotline, no one's captured the type of data that we've captured, and they're very interested in doing so. So we don't have the national numbers around bias like you would expect, but we really do rely on the numbers that the FBI provides when we want to get a national snapshot. One of the things that we do in our office, Johanna and I, is going to grow here shortly. We're going to be adding some positions and filling some positions, but we keep an eye on what's happening on a national level in the realm of domestic terrorism and those sorts of things. So those kind of give us an idea of where we have unrest and where we can, and where we are now. It's one person in another part of the world can introduce information or hate online, and it spreads like wildfire. And the next thing you know, we're having an impact here in our state that we have to respond to. And that means, picking up the phone, from, contacting law enforcement, working with our community partners in supporting this victim who has no idea who has unleashed this awful thing upon them. So it really is a problem, and it's really one reason why we want to connect with individual communities to share this data, to talk about the extent of this problem.
This is Kelsey. Thank you so much. Again, great report and great work of being a leader for everyone else. So good job.
And this is Johanna, just to carry off of something that Faye said. She reminded me other trends that we track are extremist groups like Faye was mentioning. And then also we track government perpetrated bias, which again, we saw another surge in reporting starting last summer.
I will add that there's limitations to the services that we provide. We cannot initiate an investigation. We cannot substitute our judgment for that of the reporting law enforcement officer responding to the scene. Certainly the criteria that we use to assess a bias incident might be different than what they use, but we have conversations about how we arrived at those decisions. And so it's very important for us to keep the avenues of communication open and to build those relationships.
I think Mike is next.
I just concur with Kelsey that was just an excellent, this is Mike Waters. I concur with Kelsey that was just an excellent presentation. I'm really appreciative of all of it. One little detail question, just because knowing that we're the Human Rights Commission for the city, and I wondered if the data, and I don't see it on the dashboard, but I imagine is the city data captured so we would know within Marion County, how many of those were actually within city limits as opposed to other areas. And I don't know how critical that data is, except that it's just interesting and that is our jurisdiction.
This is Johanna. So when we first started tracking the data, we were actually tracking by zip code, so very specific even within cities. We do capture generally most data points that folks are willing to share, including city. We're cautious about confidentiality and identity and protecting folks. Obviously, Salem is a different story than, say, Prineville maybe, or a smaller community where someone may be one of a handful of folks who are known and out or identify as, connected to or who are a member of a particular protected class. So we have to be careful, particularly with intersectionality. So the short answer is we do have the data, we don't publish the city data. And I'm happy to, if you want, run quickly through the website's data dashboard if that's helpful, so we can look at both Polk and Marion counties, or you're welcome to poke around yourself.
Thank you.
This is Johanna. Would it be helpful, and do we have time for me to do a quick data dashboard review, or I understand if you have to move on to the next agenda item?
Angela here. Gretchen, I think we do have time, right? Or are we running short? Because I know we have another presentation as well.
I think you're okay. If the group would like the information, I think you're okay on time.
But yeah, I think that'll be helpful. So
okay,
go ahead.
Okay, so if you go to standagainsthate.oregon.gov, I'm actually showing you from the CJC's website because our network at DOJ has been down all day, and I tried right before we got on, and the internet, or our internet site, was out. So this is CJC's website, but we share the data. So if you go to our website, you can see that last year we had about 1,100 reports to the hotline. Through August of this year, we've had 1,100 reports to the hotline. So we're on trend to significantly surpass reports. Everything is clickable. So if I specifically wanted to see, well, what happened in August, I can click August, and all of the data below will filter down. And so you can see in the map, if we look at Marion County, there were 23 reports in August and 0 reports in Polk County in August. And again, if I wanted to specifically look at Marion County, I could click on Marion County and the data below would filter. So those 23 reports, here's the breakdown. We had 12 reports where the bias or hate criteria was not met, which is a very high number. That number is usually less than 3% of all of our reports. Sometimes we get quite a bit of spam. So that could have been something that happened last month. But we had 7 bias incidents and 3 hate crimes. In terms of the conduct reported, you can see that there were 8 reports of harassment, 3 of vandalism, and 2 of institutional bias. And then it gives a breakdown of, well, who was targeted? Again, we're specifically looking at August in Marion County. And if I wanted to see, well, within the protected class of sexual orientation, we had 5 reports of anti-lesbian bias and 1 report of LGBTQ plus unspecified within sexual orientation. So if I refresh the page again, starting back up at the top, I'm going to keep it, I'm not going to click a particular month, just so that we can see since January of 2020 what the trends have been in Marion County. 168 reports in Marion County since the hotline opened. 107 of those have been bias incidents. 39 of those have been hate crimes. If you remember from back in the data on the one pager, these numbers don't match. Again, because someone may choose to report to law enforcement and never report to the hotline. And so that information would not be reflected here on the data dashboard. In terms of the conduct reported, everything has a rollover definition. So if you're wondering, well, what is harassment? You can roll your mouse over harassment and see, okay, well, harassment is defined as language or conduct intending to alienate, offend, degrade, including stalking, mimicking, mocking, threats, and hate speech. So you can see the conduct reported, including 1 homicide reported to the hotline. And then in terms of protected class, following national trends and state trends in Marion County, the vast majority of reporting is race-based bias, but we include all of the reports for all other protected classes. And again, if I'm interested specifically in, say, national origin bias, what has been reported in Marion County, I can click on national origin and see a breakdown. 5 reports of anti-Mexico bias, 5 reports of anti-China bias, 3 reports of specifically anti-Asian bias, but the nation wasn't specified. So again, you can see the breakdown from there. So if I specifically wanted to follow the anti-China reports, I could click on China and see there was 1 assault, 1 vandalism, and 4 reports of harassment. 2 of those were hate crimes, 3 of those were bias incidents. So again, everything filters up and down through the dashboard, and it really allows you to see what's happening, where, and when. So I'm going to refresh the page again and stop sharing my screen again. Happy to answer any other questions, or again, thank you so much for having us today and allowing us some time and space to share what's been reported. We really hope the one-pager document is helpful, that you share it amongst your communities. We have all sorts of bite-sized pieces of information you can share out on social media as well.
This is Gretchen. Thank you. Just for those listening, it might be helpful to clarify one point. You spoke earlier about investigations. Is it helpful to clarify these represent reports as experienced by the survivor or person? Maybe clarify a little bit about that might be helpful.
Sure. This is Johanna. So on the hotline, we have a 3-step process of determining a report on. So we come from a place of belief. We are not law enforcement, so it's not my job to go pick up video evidence or require that someone have 8 witnesses to verify that they were called a slur. Someone calls the hotline and says, I was called this name. I come from a place, and my role on the hotline is to believe them, to take them at their word, and to evaluate, were they targeted based on a protected class? Did they feel like the motivation was in any way based in bias? And is that identity reflected in the 7 protected classes under the law? So again, I don't need audio tape evidence, or I don't need to do any additional evidence. If someone says someone punched me and called me this slur, then I put that under assault, and I don't need a photo of their black eye or any other verification that something happened. So that's how we make a determination on the hotline, from a place of belief and going through that 3-step process that is actually that we inherited from the Vera Institute, the BCAT process.
And I will add that, we are required under statute to provide trauma-informed services that are designed to reduce the effects of trauma and not reproduce trauma. So we do come from a place of belief. Again, we don't have authority to initiate investigations, under this particular statute for this purpose.
Thank you. It looks like Tricarico's hand is up.
Thank you. This is Tricarico. I want to echo the other sentiments from my colleagues here that thank you so much for doing this. This is really incredible. And I also really appreciate the language that you're both using around this about being trauma informed and believing people, and that this is a reaction of dominant culture to what many people have experienced for a long time. I really appreciate that. It's kind of a loaded question, so I apologize, but what have you seen as far as how people use this data, to make decisions or to make policies, that might be helpful to us as we look at, okay, what can we do as the HRC?
Okay,
No, go
this
ahead.
is Johanna. So I think the number one thing that that this data has done thus far is to show folks in government that this is a significant problem that's not going to be solved by just Johanna and Faye, just one person answering the hotline. We were very fortunate to be supported by the BIPOC caucus in the legislature this past session, who saw this information, saw what in 2019 the legislature asked one person to be funded through a grant, not through government dollars, to do on a temporary basis. It wasn't a permanent role. And they realized, okay, well, that's not going to be solved in a year in a temporary grant funded position. We need more folks doing this work and supporting folks. So I think the number one way that the data has served Oregonians is to fund additional hotline support. And so the hotline, fortunately, for support purposes is growing, unfortunately, because it reflects that this is such a big problem. So our civil rights unit is growing, and our hotline advocate team is growing as well.
And I would say that everyone has a role to play. Becoming educated about what bias looks like, or someone reports it to you, informing them about the services that we provide, encouraging people to use the hotline, downloading our materials, sharing them, distributing them, and having as many people in your communities informed about these services as possible can do a great service in helping us mitigate some of the harm that's caused, because it's not one person who's being harmed. It's a community of people who are being harmed. And just like Johanna said, we're talking about 3% of the incidents being reported, the crimes being reported. So there's a whole lot that's going on out there that's not being reported, that's leaving people feeling unsafe, that's causing people to leave the state of Oregon. During COVID, we have had, people contact the hotline just share appalling things that have happened to them and leave the state and taking their talent, taking their all of the treasures that they are embodied in them with them, and leaving us without that. So this is a moment we are experiencing together, and it's gonna be all hands on deck. So what you can do to the extent of getting the word out, we're happy to help. We consider you partners in this work, and anything we can do to help in that effort, just let us know.
Thank you so much. I was going to ask you the same. Is there anything we can do to support you? Because this is fantastic.
This is Johanna. Yeah, I think just hearing us out, sharing the resource with your community, sharing the data with your community is a huge step. And I will note that I have not yet said the hotline number, so I better do so. And that is 1-844-924-BIAS, which is 2427. And we accept all relay calls. We have access to interpreters. Our website is standagainsthate.oregon.gov. It is readily available in 8 languages and can be translated into any other languages upon request.
This is Kathy again. Thank you so much for being here. This is great information. I'm really glad that you came to share. I also wanted to mention, I came across the You Belong newsletter on the website, and that is just a huge collection of really great information and resources. And if you haven't, if others have, if you have not seen it, I would encourage you to look at that, because there's all sorts of information in there about the Civil Rights Unit and events in the community and different groups that people can turn to. So I just think that's great information too.
This is Johanna. If anyone would like to sign up to receive the letter, you can email us at youbelong@doj.state.or.us.
Yeah, Angela here. Again, I just want to echo what my fellow commissioners said. Thank you. This is very vital information. Thank you for joining us. Does anybody have more questions? If not, again, thank you. And then, as always, feel free to reach out if we can help in any way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. I believe we're on to Salem Police Planning, and that is Lieutenant Aguilar.
Thank you. Hi, yes, this is Debbie. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see. Okay, I think you can see it. So this document should look hopefully familiar. I think that Gretchen passed it out or included that in your meeting packet in the email. So I just wanted to cover really quick our strategic plan. I know that this was kind of a last minute insert, so I appreciate you letting me pass along this information. So first of all, a lot of people have a question about what is a strategic plan. And strategic plan is simply a document that allows us to provide some focus and framework to the work that we plan on engaging in the next 3 years. So our strategic plan is a 3-year plan. It is based heavily on the recommendations from the Hillard-Hines police assessment that occurred last year. So the plan really has a lot of community input, because Hillard-Hines did reach out to a lot of different community groups to try to get their information on what they would like to see out of the police department. But we're still looking for additional feedback. So we've developed this one pager that talks a little bit about our plan and gives you some of the work that we've done so far. So far we've identified the 3 goals, and they're very broad goals, the 3 overarching goals that are going to kind of like be the buckets of work that we're going to take on here starting in January, because we're hoping that this will be done and ready to start in January. With the first goal of being safety, the second goal of being legitimacy, and then the third goal of being excellence. So under each of those goals, we have these proposed objectives that start to narrow down where our focus and where our work is going to take place. So the right now, the input that we're looking for is in a survey, and the survey will take you through the different objectives and allow you to take a look at them, rate them on, do you think that this is important for us to take on? And it also will give you a free form box that will let you provide us with some other information if you think that there's another area that you think we need to address. So this is the very first part, kind of our unveiling. And then hopefully by November, we will have these objectives even more focused into what strategies are we going to have to make these objectives happen. So it may be, our body worn camera program, which we got funding for, will more likely than not be included in one of those strategies. So we're looking at how do we enhance police and community trust, and then increase transparency and information sharing. So our body worn camera program might be one of those areas, as well as an information portal. So right now we don't share a lot of information. Our website isn't that great. So with our strategic plan, what we hope to do is create this information portal where you can go on our website and look at a lot of different information, like our use of force statistics. You can look at complaints and how they've been cleared. You can look at all of our policies and directives. So we really want to, so that's just an example of a specific strategy that will come out of these objectives. So we have I think it's on here. Oh yeah. So we have, like I said, we have a survey out. It is already going. We're hoping to get quite a few responses. That's why we're trying to share it as much as we can with different groups. The deadline for submitting the survey is October 24th. And you can go to the City of Salem website, to the police department. And once you get on the police department website, if you go down to the bottom of the page, there's a bucket that I think says trust building work, I believe is what it says. And you click on that and it will give you a couple links, not only to our strategic plan, and give you a lot of different information about the plan, and allow you the opportunity to fill out the survey. But then there's also a link to some trust building work that we're doing. So if you want to read on that, you can. Let me stop sharing. All right. So that was what I really wanted to cover, was the fact that we have this strategic plan, that we have a survey out, that we're hoping to gather additional information from the public. And then it'll take us a little bit of time to go through the responses. And then we hope to incorporate the themes from those responses in the strategic plan. We're hoping to have the plan finalized by December. And at some point in December, we'll make a presentation to the city council. And then, like I said, January of next year, we hope the plan will be in place and we will start, we'll start our work. And then we will have, it's an internal document in that it's what we will use to plan our resources, to plan our budget. Based on what our objectives are and our strategies are. But I'm sure that we will also be providing input back to the community on the strategic plan and the successes we've had, or if we have challenges where there may be an area where we haven't quite been able to meet the mark, then we can report back on what some of the challenges are and how we plan on overcoming them. That is the other issue, not issue, but the other point, I guess, is that although we hope that this 3-year plan will be able to complete the majority of it, we do realize that there might be some objectives and some strategies that we just can't complete in 3 years. Maybe it's due to budget, maybe it's due to personnel or other difficulties. But our hope is that we can complete the majority of it. And then after the 3 years, then we'll look at the strategic plan and kind of start the process over again and find some new buckets of work to take on. So I didn't know if there were any questions about the plan. I went through it kind of fast, I know. Okay.
This is Tricarico. Can you tell me what, if any, ideas from the proposed documents that we sent to City Council were used in this plan?
I don't have that document in front of me. So I couldn't off the top of my head say what exactly there was, but I could get back to you on that.
Okay, great, thank you. And then is there anything in the plan that outlines DEI specific objectives like an equity lens, anything like that?
Yes. There are some specific areas where we specifically call out DEI, and we'd actually talked about how every objective, every strategy, we apply that lens to it. But there are some specific ones around our, like, for example, how we recruit, how we hire, how our background process works, our promotional process. So yes, there are DEI lenses applied to it. If there aren't any questions, Angela, would you like me to just roll into the bias crime report?
Angela here. Yeah, if nobody else has any questions, that would be great.
All right, so we had 2 crimes that were reported last month or since the last meeting, and 4 bias incidents. The 2 crimes were reported mid-September, so September 16th and September 17th. The one occurred in Central Salem, and it involved a male who appeared to be perhaps suffering a mental health crisis or maybe under the influence. He was inside a building, was using racial slurs towards customers and actually pushing customers. We were called. Unfortunately, we responded. By the time we responded, the male had left, and we don't have an ID on him. So there's the potential for a bias crime if we're able to locate that male. And then on September 17th, male juvenile walking home from school was assaulted by 4 other males who, one of them hit him in the face and then stole a bandana that he had. The bandana was red colored, and the male made the comment that you can't carry that color up here in this part of town. The juvenile that was assaulted has no affiliation with any type of criminal activity. He just did not know that that color would be interpreted by those individuals as being a color he couldn't carry. So we do have video from that incident. However, we don't have an identification on the individuals yet. So it's an open investigation. As far as the incidents, the first one happened on September 7th. And it was an unknown female. It was in Northeast Salem. Unknown female was found trespassing on a property owner's property. The property owner, who happened to be Black, asked the woman to leave her property. The woman started using racial slurs towards her, eventually did leave. And we don't know who she is, and we weren't able to make contact with her at that point. In Southeast Salem, on September 13th, we had a neighbor who was using racial slurs, anti-Black, towards another neighbor, juvenile. An officer responded and then referred them to the Oregon Bias Crime Hotline. A business in Northwest Salem on October 10th found several swastika stickers that were placed on their front door. No video and no known suspects at this point. And then also in Northwest Salem, a bus rider found a poster in one of the bus shelters that had a swastika on it. And the comments, "Remember Nuremberg" and "Do not comply," and then a QR code to join the group. The group actually, from what I can find online, is I think self-identifies as anti-fascist. So I don't know if maybe the intent wasn't to create a hostile environment, but was maybe just poor marketing. But the person who saw the swastika was very concerned, so they called somebody who then called the police to report it. The poster was taken down by the time that we responded. And that is all I have for this month.
Thank you, Lieutenant Aguilar. Any questions?
This is David. I have a question. On the bandana, how is that a bias crime?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I missed some of the story. So they were using racial slurs. Yes, thank you. They used racial slurs towards him. And then actually there was another incident where 2 days later he was walking home from school, and it was towards nighttime, and it looked like a car was following him. He dove into the bushes to hide, and as the car was trying to find him, they were using racial slurs. So that was the bias nexus.
Looks like Amelia, you have a question?
Yeah, my question is there somewhere on police website where I can see these incidents and what areas of Salem they're occurring?
I don't have these incidents listed on the website right now. However, with that data port, because the website just is not very user friendly. It's not very easy to get information on there. So with this data portal, my hope is that we can take the data that we get from our reports, similar to what the Oregon Department of Justice has, and have some type of dashboard where that information can be easily accessible. So that's a great question, but not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? All right, once again, thank you, Lieutenant Aguilar, and we can move on to complaints/concerns of discrimination. Gretchen?
Sure, this is Gretchen. I had one received during the report period. A person reported that they had entered into a place of public accommodation and had been told that they would need to wear a mask in the indoor settings given the pandemic, and explained that given their faith and their religion, that they felt that wearing a mask would be counter to that perspective. and the organization asserted that the mask requirement needed to apply across the board. So I received that situation, consulted with attorney and tried to read what I can, and talked through with the individual. And that's the only report that I received during the period.
Angela here. Thank you, Gretchen. Any questions regarding that? All right, hearing none, I think we can move on to task force and project updates with awareness. Mike.
Well, hi, everybody. Before I start on my report, Gretchen wanted me to mention, and I wanted to mention as well, that my term on the commission is up at the end of the year. And I've decided at this time I'm not going to renew on the full commission. So there will be openings on awareness and LGBTQIA if those two task forces continue for folks to take them on. And I also am going to stick around. I just not planning on being a full commissioner, but I want to do things because I have a little bit of attention deficit, and if I don't do things, I get bored. So we'll still be around for a while. But awareness did meet this month. We, thanks to Gretchen, have a really nice plan and sort of an outline for how we can approach 2022 with our communications. Gretchen kind of lined out month by month what events are happening that are of interest, what are typical things that the HRC puts together. So, and I would love to share that plan with you once cat time. Once we've kind of fleshed it out a little bit more. I think there were a couple things that we had to add to it in our awareness meeting. I don't know that I have much more to say from awareness. Those of you who are at awareness, do you have anything to add to what I just shared? I don't want to be over long in my report, but I don't want to forget something either.
This is Tricarico. I have nothing to add.
So looking forward to sharing out the plan with all of you.
All right, thank you, Mike. Equity Ask report, Gretchen.
Everybody, first this week recognized Indigenous Peoples Day, which was one of the equity asks around that holiday, and the mayor and council opted to recognize the day with a proclamation. So I owe you all and the mailing list that we have a copy of that proclamation, but that was shared by Council President Hoy on Monday evening at the council meeting. I also owe you a document. We discussed the format last month and I got some really good feedback from you all. And then I found myself wrestling with it. We agreed on how to categorize the different equity asks and questions in our document, essentially according to status and progression. And at first glance, I was moving through and making some quick clicks of this is this, and this is this, and this, and this. And then the more I got into it, the more concerned I became that it felt like a short shrift. And I felt like I needed to engage with different teams and departments to get their views on the status. And I certainly don't know all of the statuses across the city. And so I found myself wrestling with it. And so I don't have it ready yet, but I want you to know that it's a work in progress and something that I'm paying attention to, but I found it not doable to achieve by this meeting. I also wanted to let you know that the one of the things of interest was that the council provided some funding to hire a person who will specifically work for the city doing coordination around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that position has now closed, and we have applicants and are moving into the interview phase of that. And I understand I'm participating on the interview panel as an employee to the team. So we should have some news on when a new person will be starting soon. Let's see. I think the last thing is, as I wrestle with the report to bring back a framework for reporting to you, I'm kind of doing it also for City Council. We're working on a report that updates the mayor and city council members on work done in this arena to date. So it's possible that the work will be of interest both to you as commissioners and to our mayor and council. So we're working on preparing a council update on these subjects, as well as I know many of the elected officials are interested in the progress made to date on projects. I should note, it's not as though every single one of those equity asks has been formally accepted or adopted by any means. They're recommendations that have been offered to the city. And so they're all kind of living as such, as offerings or recommendations. And it's not as though every single one of them has all been accepted and adopted. So we're in that space, but we'll see what emerges when we report on work done and progress made to City Council. But that's the updates that I have for today, and certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have. You know, I should add, this is Gretchen again, I should add an apology to Tricarico. I imagine Tricarico is waiting on me to schedule the next gathering for the number C on the agenda. So I just wanted to apologize. I didn't get our group together. I was aware of a couple of illnesses on the team, so I was sort of stalling, and then I probably stalled too long and maybe overweighted on that to try to give everybody a chance to heal, but I need to get going on scheduling that team.
Thank you, Gretchen. This is Tricarico. I wanted to ask you, I think when I saw that posting for the DEI city position, it was listed as like a temporary or limited duration, which I know probably is tied to funding. Do you know if that's slated to be a permanent position at some point?
It's earmarked right now through June 30th of 2022. And then the budget process that we're heading into right now will determine, ultimately the budget committee and the council will determine if they're going to continue it. So right now it's through 22. And that reminds me, that's the other task I've been working on, is gathering details around which of the items, you had a list of items under the category of fund, and there's other things that have emerged around diversity, equity, and inclusion that can come forward in our, what we call our program enhancement process as we all prepare the budget. Those meetings are starting to require some preparation. So that's another focus.
Thank you.
Right, Angela here. If nobody else has any questions, I think we kind of already went over equity lenses / chapter 97, but Tricarico, feel free to add anything if you have anything.
Yeah, this is Tricarico. It was me. I got COVID. It sucked, y'all. So stay safe. I'm better now. It's all good. But we will get that up and running again. So thank you, Gretchen, for stalling for me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you're feeling better. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Angela here. Thank you, Tricarico, and I hope you're recovering as well. Let's see. I guess we can move on to our LGBTQIA+ intersectional rights task force with Mike.
This is Mike, and we did meet this month, and our next kind of major event for LGBTQIA+ is our Trans Day of Remembrance. That is on Saturday, November 20th this year. We kind of discussed some of the logistics and coordination around that. And I think I need to touch bases with you, Gretchen, to make sure that we're set on it. But we also have another LGBTQIA meeting later this month to finalize details. It'll be similar to last year, where the the Trans Day of Remembrance will be in an all virtual format, that will have a Zoom for the participants, the speakers and readers, and will broadcast on YouTube for sort of the public. And we have plans to get that information out via a flyer and other means. We'll want to definitely do an email, Gretchen, I think, on this one. So that was kind of took most of the meeting, was just talking about Trans Day of Remembrance. Oh, no, it didn't take most of the meeting because there was another topic, which was safe spaces. And thanks to a city staff member whose name I am blanking on right this moment, Gretchen, if you can fill in the blank there. One of the city staff members really did a nice job of taking the work that we've done so far on the Safe Spaces project and putting it into a formal project plan with a timeline. And we now have those things, which is like super, super exciting. And I suspect that those things will be ready to come to the full commission, perhaps as early as our next meeting, because they were in such great shape from the city staff member. And who is that staff member, Gretchen?
That's my colleague, Kelly Bleckschmidt.
So Kelly just did an outstanding job of putting that together, and we were so grateful. Does anybody have any questions?
Angela here. Thank you, Mike. Hearing no questions, I think we move on to staff updates. Gretchen.
Hey, it's me, just one. This seemed to be my month of errors because not only did I send you goofy notes, thank you, Kathy, for correcting that, but then when I was reading the agenda, I noticed our agenda lists that our next meeting, the date's incorrect. So I just wanted to alert everybody. Oh, and I think I had a typo on the time of the meeting. Okay, so things go in threes. So those are my three. Holy cannoli, Batman. I would like to observe that our next meeting is not what it says on the agenda, but is actually November 10th. And that's the only staff update that I have.
Thank you, Gretchen. What about the community calendar?
I don't think I found anything this time to bring. And again, I sure welcome, I don't find things as well as I used to. So if anybody, I'm fearing that everything is now out on social media and I don't find the right resources, but I didn't find anything this month. And so as a result, I didn't have a calendar, but certainly welcome people's referrals for further events. We'll have one next time because we have the Transgender Day of Remembrance, if nothing else.
Angela here. Okay, thank you, Gretchen. Member remarks and or announcements.
This is Tricarico. So I don't know when the next one is, Gretchen, but I will try to send it to you. But the Free Fridge Salem puts on a radical free market about once a month. So I went to the one last Saturday. It was at Grant Middle School, I want to say. And it was really, really cool. There were a lot of really great resources there, as well as just community members kind of gathering together to support each other. I wasn't able to stay long, and I don't know that I could commit to a booth, but I think it would be a great option for people to get out and meet community members. And I'd love to talk to some of the like community resource groups that were there, just to let them know like, hey, we're here, like, let's do cool stuff together. So I will try to keep an eye out for that because I see it on, usually someone sends it to me from social media because I'm not on social media. So it'll be very like chain mail of getting it to you, but I will I will do my best to update y'all so you all can go because it was really cool.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Tricarico. Any more member remarks and or announcements? I guess I just have one thing. Mike, sad to see you go. I think you've been a great asset but I'm glad that you're going to stick around for when you can. And that does remind us that we'll have those two positions to fill because you're the chair of both of those committees. And as well as this year is almost over. I think we have two more meetings, and then that's it for the year. So yeah, those chair and vice chair positions are also, those elections are also coming up. So if anybody, is planning on running, start thinking about that as well. And then we'll probably do that in January because that's what we've been doing for the past couple years. It's also where we do our yearly planning. Is that right, Gretchen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It might seem like in a couple months, but those couple months are going to come fast. So it's time to start thinking about those things. Okay. If that's everything, have a good night.